Mr. Narayan Murthy's 70 hours work week has gone viral on the internet. And today we have Harish. Harish is a good friend, a thought leader, and a very, very supportive associate as well. So Harish, what's your take on that comment from Mr. Narayan Murthy?
No, as in, I'm glad we are, speaking about, this one particular scenario. I associate, with the number of hours I have been trying to perfect this particular formula, for my own success, for, companies I have been associated with, my teams. So I'm really glad we're talking about this.
So is there a universal number that the work week should have, or does it really differ from person to person? What's your take?
As in, there is a number based on labor law.
Yes.
All right. So that has to be taken into context. And I think it's very important to call this out, that a lot of what we are saying is our personal views. And at the end of the day, companies also have to adhere to certain local regulations in context to number of hours and, permissible. But as in outside of that, I feel it's definitely based on person to person.
Sure.
It's also based on teams, because I've seen, different teams, like high performing teams, behave differently. Yes. in respect to number of hours they put in as compared to low performing teams. Yeah.
Awesome. So for our viewers, what do you think? Is it the number of hours, or is it the outcomes that you generate? What's your take there?
So I feel, like the way I look at it, there are two categories in which on how this has to be approached, or at least how I see this particular question. One is you look at outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
and then you fit in the number of hours that is required to create that outcome. So that's your first, way of looking at it. The second way of looking at it is you budget for the number of hours, and then you fit in the outcomes. Okay. And I'm again talking about both of these have to be taken in context of high performing people. You're really trying to do the good. Okay. So let me explain the first one.
Sure.
The first one is when you look at an outcome and then you fit in the number of hours, relating to that. So the best example is we are building a software,
Mm-hmm.
and say we are looking at Agile as a philosophy,
Yeah.
and then say Scrum as a framework.
Yeah.
Okay. So the teams get up, like, you start your sprint, and, the team gathers around with their Scrum Master.
Mm-hmm.
And in this sprint, we want to achieve, say, A, B, C, D. Right?
X
So
number
you
of
have-
outcomes that you want to
Yeah,
generate.
you,
Yes.
you have all your story points broken down. Everything is good.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at the outcome, the team will decide the number of hours in a democratic manner. That if we pick up all of this work, this outcome will require, say, 100 hours.
Absolutely.
Or if it's a team, let's say in a sprint, we're talking about 500 hours.
Sure.
And then each of them will divide the work amongst themselves,
Okay.
and they'll try to beat the 500 hours or achieve it minimum within that time period. So that is one way of looking at it. Okay. Now, at a personal level, you can look at what you want to achieve today within a week,
Mm-hmm.
or within a month. But then at a personal level, the time that is required to complete the task is just your opinion. Because in the example I gave you about Scrum, the team democratizes the number of hours, right? Like, so, one developer will say the story point is 5 hours, and somebody else will say it's 10 hours, and then they come to a common point. But when you're doing it at a personal level, you're really saying this can be done according to your capacity, your view. It can be done in certain number of hours, and you do it within that particular hours. Everybody just does it. High performing player, people will do it, and everybody has their own way of looking at it. So this is the first way, right? You decide outcome and fit in the number of hours. The other way, which is my way of looking at things, is I budget the hours and fit in outcomes in it.
Sure.
And over the years, the way I've operated is I have certain outcomes I want to generate this year, every month of the year,
Fair.
every week, and every day. And in some days when I'm like super productive, and if I'm in the right frame of mind, I know what I'm going to do every hour.
Wow.
So if I look at it from that context, then I relate to the comment, Mr. Murthy made, right? Where he's suggesting the youth, people should work 70 hours a week. I work 12 and 14 hours a day. And so when I'm really working 12 and 14 hours a day, what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to fit in outcomes that can be achieved within that hours. So these are the two ways of looking at it.
I like what you said, and especially the approach that you take. It just increases your chance of creating more and more headlines, accomplish more. And I think what you've done with Adroit Vantage in less than 24 months, the kind of products that you've been building at the cost that you're building, I think it just assures the mindset that you bring onto the table, to be very honest with you. But, it also, there's another question that comes to my mind. There is always quality over quantity, right? So like you were talking about Scrum, in Scrum, it's referred to as velocity. So how do you ensure that even though you're trying to fit in the task within the time frame that you may have, how do you ensure the quality does not get compromised for our viewers?
Yeah. As in, the good thing is when you look at the first kind, right, where you are deciding the outcomes,
yes,
and the outcomes have now been given certain number of hours that they can be done with. And then obviously you have certain number of capacity and they get paced out within the number of days. The quality within frameworks like Scrum will get checked through a very well-oiled quality assessment framework. And I'm very confident about that because I've used it with my teams over the years, and I don't think there's a problem with that. The problem with that at a personal level is who decides your standard and the outcomes you were generating for yourself.
Yeah.
And it has to be taken in not only at your workplace, the outcomes you're generating, but also in your personal life, right? So if I say I want to achieve certain things this week in my personal life, who decides the quality? It's mostly you, your friends, and your family members, because they are the only ones who are really commenting on, whatever you did for them and, for the community. If you were doing a social cause and, whatever you did within a relationship, sure, you got to take that feedback.
Yes.
Because if you're just running it in your mind, then it's going to be a single-minded view. But when you're trying to do it the other way, which is you have budgeted the number of hours. Somebody like me who's worked 12, 13, 14 hours every day since the start of my career. And that's the mindset I have always approached my work with. The quality has to be taken on a very continuous feedback basis from my managers, from my mentors, from my coaches, saying what I'm doing, is it correct or not?
Yeah.
And it has to be done with the spirit that when that feedback comes, it's taken into it's also taken in the right context. Because when people work in a silo, longer duration of hours, they're actually expecting everybody else to do the same thing, and then there is a lot of dispute. There's a lot of problems, mostly emotional problems that it can drive. So when I approach 12 hours, I'm actually approaching it as an individual. I don't expect that from my team. I don't expect that from the company. I'm not expecting it from, people back home. This is a personal way of doing certain things. It's like what Tendulkar used to do, right? And there was this fabulous example I heard about Sachin many, many years back. That Sachin, even when he was practicing and then they would break for lunch, he would not remove his
cricket guy.
Yeah, he would not remove any of his gears. Sure. Obviously, the helmet, but he would not remove any of them, and he'll still wear his pads, and he'll still wear all the guards he's wearing, because he doesn't
Want to come out of it.
Right. He's not wanting to come out of that frame of mind. So everybody does it in their own way. Is he expecting everybody else to do it? I don't think so. In the same way, I don't expect everybody around me to work 12 to 14 hours. But the quality has to be assessed through continuous feedback, and it has to be taken with the right frame of mind.
Well, that's a great point that you make. It's always a personal choice whether you need to work 12 or 14 hours or you need to work 8 or 9 hours. It's always a personal choice based on the outcomes that you wish to create for your organization or for yourself in your personal life. Completely with you on that. So what's the motivation factor that you think run behind people's mind to either do 8 or 9 hours, 6 or 7 hours, or in some cases like yours, 12 to 14 hours? Like, what's that motivation factor that runs up?
Yeah, I think I always categorize people. The way I look at the world is there are three categories of people, right? The first category of people are the guys who are God gifted.
Sure.
They're just gifted with what they're good at, right? Sure. So Sachin is a great example. He's just God gifted with the kind of talent he had. Obviously, you have to groom and be very disciplined about what has been gifted to you, and then you work your way.
Sure.
The second category of people are people who've not been, you are the base talent. Somebody like me, I was never good at Excel. I was never good at communication. I was never good at putting strategies in place, and I've learned from people around me, and I've really worked I've really worked hard towards ensuring I'm reaching the top and making giving the best quality outcome, right? And the third category of people who are just travelers, they're passengers in a train. So if you ask this question about motivation, I just feel that motivation is something you have to work towards. It's like it's a habit. It's not a chemical in your body that you can measure. Like you can measure vitamin D levels and you can measure vitamin B12 levels and say, oh, you know what, it's lower, and then I'm going to pop a pill and it's going to go up. So motivation is something across the three categories. It comes to them in different ways, but there's no way to measure it. You got to observe it. You got to take feedback from people and say, what do you think is happening and how am I approaching some things? And then you have to work towards it to ignite that motivation. And you have to have a morning routine. You have to have an end of day routine. You have to have hourly routines to ensure those levels are up. Because at the end of the day, the conversation, the point Mr. Murthy is really making is not the number of hours. The point he's really making is so much broader, right? If you really asked him to write a book, he would have written 10 chapters on this very topic, because then each of the chapter would have given the context, right? Because a lot of the social media reactions, you said this whole thing has gone viral, is because a lot of the reactions have been taken out of context. So if you wrote a book and wrote 10 chapters and each of the chapter had a context to what he was saying, right? Like whether it's motivation, quality that you spoke about, number of hours people should do versus output that they want to generate, and all of that other thing would have been squeezed into this nice, amazing book, right? But obviously, he had to make a comment in a particular statement, in a particular paragraph, and that's what came out. So in my opinion, motivation does play a big role, because if you're motivated and motivation with strategy, because motivation, just raw motivation doesn't get anything done, but motivation with the right strategy in place can squeeze the outcome that 8 people said democratically should take 50 hours. You can actually squeeze that into maybe 30 hours.
Sure.
You can't make it 2 hours. That's really not possible. But say you can squeeze that into 30 hours. Okay. And a lot of people that I've seen have that capacity to do it, right? Because people around will say, hey, listen, you know what, I think this contract has to be signed and it has to be read and reviewed, and this is going to take 5 days. And I've seen people do that in like 15 hours. And then the question comes, did they put those 15 hours in 2 days? Or they actually just did round the clock 15 hours? You see what I'm saying? So how people deliver the 15 hours is a completely different topic altogether.
Perfect.
Yeah. So in my opinion, motivation with strategy is the right approach, and you have to be motivated. It's a habit you got to create. It comes naturally to category A people, and everybody else has to find a way to get it.
So if I have to just summarize this for our viewers, do you think determination, focus, and discipline ideally becomes a strong foundation to move from category 2 to category 1 in your definition. And then a very strong mindset to continuously doing what you do on a very regular basis so that it becomes a habit, ideally will show you a transition of moving from category 2 into category 1 over a period of time.
Yeah.
That's
I think the other important thing is, when I started my career, I used to consciously make an effort that I will spend 12 hours at work.
Sure.
Yeah, which is outside the travel time, because I used to travel from town to Malad. It used to take about an hour and a half one way, through the local trains. Yeah. But the conscious effort I was making in the first couple of years of my career has become a very natural instinct for me now. I really don't look at the clock anymore. I start working in the morning. I have a morning routine that I have to ensure my energy levels are higher. But now it just comes naturally. Like, I come to work when I got to come to work. I leave when my instinct tells me I've achieved everything. Yeah, on the clock it may still be 12 hours. On the clock it could be 14, 15 hours some days, and 18 hours some days, and maybe 5 hours some days. Because if you build that instinct, that's really important. Looking at the clock is not important. It's actually just one of the many ways of building the right habit. And I think that's exactly what Mr. Murthy was alluding to. That's my sense. Saying, why don't you start by working 70 hours a week? Yeah, but I started working 84 hours a week. Or somebody else may start, like if you listen to Elon Musk and some of his conversations, he may be alluding that people should be working higher number of hours.
Absolutely.
Right? It's like when you go to the gym on your first day, right? Your trainer says you gotta be on the treadmill for 15 minutes for your body to warm up. Okay. But on 365th day, you know exactly when your body gets warmed up.
Correct.
You know the pace of the treadmill. You know at what pace you got to run.
Absolutely.
For your body to warm up, so you can go and do your legs. You can do whatever you got to do after your warm-up exercises are over. So in the same context, I feel it's a starting guideline. Mm-hmm. It cannot be taken and kept in your pocket forever.
Sure.
Because the 70 hours today should be maybe 90 and 100 hours for some other person. And that's how I look at it. When I read the article, and that's how I relate to it. And in my opinion, that's the big picture. Yeah. Rather than being very critical about, it's 70 hours, right? Like when you get your first diet, for example, you're trying to, be healthy, and your dietitian writes, literally on a pen and paper, you can only have 2 pieces of bread a day.
Sure.
You can only have 2,
gives you a full
cups
diet
of,
chart.
tea a day. And that is at the underlining its calories, underlining its sugar, whatnot. And then over a period of time, I've seen people who are super fit, super healthy. They know exactly, they look at the food that comes on the platter, mm-hmm. and they know exactly what they're supposed to eat, because now it's become it's sixth sense for them.
Sure.
And that's how I look at it. You know what I mean?
Correct. So continuous practice of certain habits just ensures that your mind is trained, which is rock solid. And I think I've worked with you for about 8 or 9 years, and your energy levels, be it the first hour of your day starting or be it the last hour, I think the energy levels are rock solid. This is my personal observation. Even in the last hour, the kind of creativity, the alternative thinking that you bring onto the table is something that I have really admired over a period of time. So what's the secret sauce behind that? Do you want to share your schedules? Like, what time do you go to sleep? What time do you get up? How many hours of sleep a day? Like, some tips for us.
Yeah. So I'm not God gifted, right? I'm not category 1 people, right? Like I said, right? As in Sachin is God gifted. There's so many other people who are I've seen around me who are just God gifted, get up in the morning and do their thing. Obviously they work hard. I'm not taking that away from them. So for me, there are certain things I measure in my day-to-day life, right? Whether it's the number of hours I work out, how motivated I'm feeling, and I measure my motivation through energy levels.
Sure.
There are ways in which you should test your energy levels. One of the ways to test your energy levels is your decibels. At what decibel are you really speaking? Because it says that posture is another way of really figuring out your energy level, because as the energy diminishes, your body will start reacting to the lower energy level. You start sinking in.
Yeah.
You go behind.
A little bit more relaxed.
So I observe a lot of that. I definitely observe things that my doctor prescribes me to observe. They are not done daily, but they are done in certain intervals, like vitamin D, B12, protein levels in the body and things like that. So the morning routine is very simple. I get up in the morning. I have to work. I work out, which is about minimum 2 kilometers, running, and then another 15-20 minutes of exercise and different forms of exercise, whether it's weight or a lot of resistance based exercise routines.
Sure.
Work is about 12 hours. After that, again, I ensure that I'm watching my energy level. I'm speaking to my team. I'm interacting with people. I'm taking a lot of energy from the positive people around me, people like you, and then you need to ensure that you're hydrated. You do like the most basic things right?
Yes.
If you're not hydrated, it's going to impact your energy levels. It's going to impact your motivational levels. So you got to do what the basic things are. And these are the things that did not come to me naturally. I've actually gone and consulted people. I've taken feedback from people. I've seen what other people do and what works for them, and then try to integrate that into my habit. I actually don't take, I take sleeping seriously because I measure my sleep every single day. But I'm one of those guys who actually don't put the number of hours in sleeping. So for me, like I said, I actually budget for number of hours at work. And then I create outcomes. With sleeping is the other way around. I actually create outcomes, and therefore the number of hours is not there. So I get up in the morning. I ensure my sleep is like, I'm feeling good about
it's sufficient enough.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I ensure I create an environment when I'm sleeping that I sleep well.
Sure.
So for example, the noise levels when I'm sleeping. I'm sleeping in a room which has less decibels disturbing me.
Sure.
I ensure the temperature is well maintained. It doesn't have to be air conditioned. We live in Bangalore, so we are blessed with the right weather. But you just do one or two things right, so that even if you sleep about 6 hours, and that's what I do most of the days, anything between 5 and 6 hours. When I get up, I'm getting up with the right frame of mind, and then my morning routine ensures I'm in the right frame of mind. Because if you don't get up with the right frame of mind, and I'm telling you, 50% of the days I don't get up with the right frame of mind, but I ensure I put myself in the right frame of mind. It's like a physical pick and drop
transition that you do.
And there are routines that I follow that ensures I put myself there.
Yeah, and I remember we used to joke around, and in fact that line still continues, right? If somebody's not their usual selves at work, or if you see them outside, there's always a comment that passes by your ear saying, "Probably this person did not get from the right side of the bed."
Yeah.
But I like what you said. I think you should. There are days wherein the best of us may not get up from the right side of the bed, but you should know how to transition yourself from that bad spot into the spot that you would generally want to be in. So the awareness, the consciousness, the realization of your emotions is, I think, you've mastered over a period of time.
Yeah, as in I've really not mastered it. As in I'm working on it. It's absolutely a daily affair, right? Like I speak to Shilpi every day. There's so much to learn from him, and there's so much to learn from you, and there's so much to learn from the person who joined us last week, right?
Yeah.
In the company. You have to keep listening, but you have to observe yourself. Like if you really don't hydrate, like if you don't have water for say 3 hours straight,
it can create.
I'm like, try this out, right? Like, if you're not hydrated, observe what's going on in your body, right? Like observe what's happening in your hands and the tingling effect. So in my opinion, like just starting with the smallest thing and then taking it to the broader point that I was making. What are you really trying to achieve this year? What is the change you want to bring, in this world, right? Why did we form Adro Advantage to begin with? Like, what are we doing here? And you really have to find that purpose in life, right? And I work towards purpose than passion, because passion, in my opinion, is an abused word. But maybe that's a conversation for a different episode altogether. And if you have the right purpose, and like I said, I've now trained myself to find that purpose every hour. And then strategically, me and my team have goals for the week, for the month, and for the year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Harish, for sharing your views. I think key takeaways today: maintain a schedule, watch your emotions, and ensure you master the art to move from category 3 or category 2 into category 1. I'm sure you're already transitioning there, but some of the tips that Harish has shared will definitely help you. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for having me.